Hey everyone, JC here. So let's give everyone a few minutes here to join up maybe the feed. I wasn't sure if I was gonna do it today actually, but I'm just well enough to do it, so okay, well why don't we start slowly anyway, and then if people show up then great. First of all, I wanted to promote my book once again. Hey guys, Beyond the Obscure, I wanted to promote it once more. Please get the book. It's available in print and ebooks as well. I just raised the price for the print recently because of the difference between that and the ebooks. Just wanted to make it more even. Anyway, please get the book. I spent a lot of time on it. It's a very good story. It's a very unique story. Definitely, like I said last time, I don't do anything mainstream or generic, so to speak. So I try to spend a lot of time trying to create something original and well, as original as possible, I should say. Just make the volume a bit less here. I think the interesting thing about book writing is that the first thing that people should admit is that there is really nothing new out there. Everything is kind of recycled from something in the past. So I admit it from the get-go. That's my starting point. I can't really create anything new, but I can make a very good spin on things. So in a nutshell, that's what all writers and filmmakers do anyway. They just put their spin on it. It's to find something new today, well, good luck. Anyway, today I wanted to talk about two things mainly. The first thing is an autobiography, because I just checking the volume. Since I started doing the podcast, I never once talked about myself, which is a bit weird, you might say, but I really wanted to jump into the meat of the show, talking about the Bible and religious things going on. So today I thought it would be a good opportunity to actually talk about myself. And then I just wanted to mention something about the midterms. The midterms are coming up. And well, once we go into that, I will explain a bit more my position, and so you can make up your own mind. But anyway, let's start with the autobiography. So I was born in June 1983 in New York City. My parents are both back then from the USSR, from Moscow, both of them. But I was born in the US. So what happened was my dad worked for the United Nations. So United Nations family. And the deal with that is they get to travel abroad for a period of 4 years. They stay and work in that whatever country. And then they go back and someone else takes their place, basically. So it's kind of a rotational system. We were lucky, of course. My parents were lucky, I should say, to go to the States at the time. Even in those days, in the 80s, if you talk to people in the Soviet Union, going to America was like the absolute ceiling. It was really the dream. So anyway, my parents got lucky. I was born there, so I'm technically a dual citizen, but I'll get into that a bit later. And so we went back to Moscow for a while. I spent about 5 or 6 years there, just growing up, mostly with my grandmother, because my parents were both working. And then we, again, by sheer luck, my dad ended up with a contract in Switzerland. Again, 4 years, same thing. But what happened in that particular period is that the perestroika happened. So this is when things really changed. I mean, when USSR became Russia. And that 4-year thing got canceled or something, so we got to stay in Switzerland basically as long as my dad was working, which was a very long time. And so basically, yeah, I went. My entire education was, in French school first, public school. Um, of course, my original language is Russian, but I learned French. I picked it up pretty quickly, even though it was a bit difficult at the beginning. And then I switched to an international school, and then English kicked in. And I had absolutely no problem with English whatsoever. It's funny now, actually, because if I rank my knowledge of the languages, English is definitely by far at the very top. And then it's probably French and then Russian. I didn't go to Russian school, so I don't know how to write very well, for example. And of course, well, you can see my book, it's in English. So English is definitely my primary language. The way that I studied English or languages in general in school was in two ways. First of all, of course, a lot of TV and video games. Things like Final Fantasy or Chrono Trigger, something with a lot of text. Of course, the first time I was reading it, maybe I didn't understand much, but you see something you don't know, then I can ask my parents. Both of them are translators, professional translators. So the assistance is right there. You just have to reach for it. And my international school was, there was no religion there. There was really kind of very a neutral environment, so to speak. We had people, of course, from Switzerland, and people from the UK, from the US, from Germany, many countries, and we even had the chance to learn German and Italian. But yeah, I didn't do very well on that. I tried to learn German for 3 years, and that didn't go anywhere at all. In Italian, well, I tried for about half a year, so again, it didn't go anywhere. And at school, I was having a bit of trouble because I just had a hard time keeping up with certain subjects, and especially sciences. I probably have a statue right now in my high school for the worst grades in biology, chemistry, and physics, actually, too, and math probably as well. But this is the thing I wanted to say, actually. This is not entirely my fault, okay? Like, don't just look at me and say, wow, you're like science illiterate or something like that. I did try, but a lot of the things do depend on teachers. And science has to be exciting. If the teacher doesn't excite you about science, then you just don't really feel it, So anyway, I went through that. Despite some teachers claiming that I would not pass the final exam, I passed it from the first time. I know what I have to do, okay? That's what I always try to tell my parents. They were, of course, worried all the time, but I just told them, I know what I have to do. Just let me do it in peace. And I did. Math grade wasn't so great, so I had to retake it a year later. And I passed, actually. So, and after that, I went to university in Manchester, in England. I spent 3 years there. It was a 4-year program, but even in that time, the job situation was not great. So basically, at the end of the second year, some lecturers came talking to us, and they said, okay, so of course you can do the third year, which is a job placement year, but the situation is not very good. So if you want, you can jump to the final year straight away. And so I did. Why why spend more time than necessary? And I took multimedia at university, so I had some basic graphics classes. Unfortunately, some programming. I didn't want to do that, but you have to because it's all part of the kind of modules. I took AI, which was, well, it was interesting. I didn't learn actually how to do much AI, but I understood the theory behind it. That was quite interesting. And so after university, I had a tough time trying to think what job I could do with what I learned. A lot of people seem to have this problem recently. They finish college or university, and the skills that they learned is just not enough. So you can't just walk into a Microsoft or a, I don't know, BioWare or whatever the name was, game company. You can't just walk through the door and say like, "Hey, I'm here." Like, who are you? So I thought, okay, what really interests me though, and what disappointed me at university is that I didn't really do enough graphic work. So I wanted to explore that a little bit more, and I wanted especially to work with more video. In fact, if I remember the university brochure, if I remember correctly anyway, they did mention there that students can take out cameras and go around and shoot stuff, but yeah, we had no cameras. There was no camera there, ever. I didn't see a camera at university, okay, ever. So that was a bit weird. So I wanted to do that, so I pursued that. I went to Canada and went to the Toronto International Academy of Design and Technology. Just rolls off the tongue. Such a long name. And the school, by the way, is defunct now. They got sued because many things. One of the things is false advertising. They were promising kind of degree programs, but there was no degree ever. It was just a certificate of attendance, basically. Book learning is different than actual experience. Yes, I agree, totally. Absolutely. So yeah, the school is gone now. But while it was there, I actually found it extremely beneficial because you get a semester, 3 months of this, 3 months of this, 3 months of that, and you learn quick. This is not like a university program where you spent an entire year just studying the theory and then maybe in the second year they let you access the cameras. No, this was cameras from week one. That's exactly what I wanted. Practical, hand-on experience. And I had trouble there at first too because I didn't really have any stories to tell, so to speak. I really wanted just to learn the camera work more than writing and directing. So the first semester was not fantastic in terms of my directing work, and neither was the second, because we had to do a music video, and music video I like occasionally, but it's not something that I would do on a regular basis. Although, of course, if people pay me, then sure, then, that's a different equation. Oh, okay. I didn't know that. So, see, my friend says that it's still around, but oh yeah, he's right actually. Yeah, the school did reopen in a different place. I also don't know who is there now, so no idea. I know that some people went to universities. So so the second semester was music video. I kind of struggled there as well. Third semester was documentary. Again, not really my thing, even though I did do a feature-length documentary, which you can check out. I'll drop a link later. That one won awards, actually, so it's important for me. And we just did it kind of Koyaanisqatsi style, so it was about nature. The idea was the impact of men on nature, and it was kind of interesting because the teacher actually was first interested by it, And then when we actually showed the final product, he was like, "Ah, well, this is not very good, and this shot is not very good, and this is like not on the shot from the airplane." Well, of course, what do you expect? We have no budget. Of course, we're not going to rent out the Hubble telescope and shoot from there, you know? So that was a bit weird, kind of weird experience. It's just like, dude, you kind of wanted us to make it, and now you, what did you expect? But I really kind of woke up probably towards the end of that semester, definitely in the fourth and the fifth ones. It's just we had a group of we had a small group, maybe four or five people. We always work together usually, and for whatever XYZ reasons, some people were just busy, some people just were making very few projects, and I just thought, okay, we're at film school, we spend a lot of money here. Let's just kind of do stuff that we can use when we leave the film school. This is material we can use, because I know many people who went to that same school, and after 1.5 years there, they had really nothing, just absolutely nothing to show, which is a major waste of time, if you ask me, and money. Music video the hardest, lip sync. Yeah, that's true. I mean, there's a couple of tricks you can do there. You can like move the music track a little bit earlier, because usually the voice is ahead, but if you just kind of match it up, it's a bit better. I'd like to do some more if it's possible on green screen, but we'll see how that goes. Yeah, I came to film school to make films, not goof around. Exactly, yeah. I remember this one class we had. We were studying film history or something, and so each class was, I don't remember exactly, 50 minutes or something like that. So this was already 40 minutes into the class. The lights are dimmed. We're watching some kind of thing. The teacher is showing us something. And just one guy suddenly strolls into the classroom with his bag. And then he realized that he's in the wrong class, and he's like, "Oh shit, I gotta get out of here." And he left. That was really funny. And the teacher then said, "See, kids, don't do drugs." Yes, absolutely. So anyway, I pursued fourth, fifth term. I started to make more projects. Some things I recently removed from my website, but it's not like I'm disappointed with it. It's just I feel that some of my work, more recent work, is just deserves to be on the website compared to more experimental stuff. Of course, I have experimental stuff too, but. And after film school, same thing happened. So you have all this knowledge now, you have all these skills, but I guess in Toronto the business is actually quite small, and it's all about networking. Also, I'm terrible at that, not so good with people. So it's hard to get a job. So I had to do something else, and I ended up teaching English in Asia for many years. Sometimes I would work in film occasionally. I mean, if it pops up and I'm available and the money is acceptable, then I will do it. But these opportunities are quite rare. And again, I'm an award-winning filmmaker. I've seen some films that go to film festivals. They use great cameras, they have great cinematography, and they don't win anything. And then I look at my film and I win something. So I literally walk through the door. I spent like no money or very small amount of money, and I can win. So, well, that's good for me, I guess. And now here I am. Now I'm in Japan. I've been here for about 5 years or so. Same thing, started here teaching English, and in Japan it's quite different. I don't know, of course it depends on the school, I guess. I didn't have these issues when I worked in, say, Korea or China, but here the employers have kind of strict and strange requirements at the same time. So sometimes the employee here is actually required to clean up. That never happened before. I've never seen that anywhere else, but I know here it's part of the culture, so I'm not gonna, and they require you to smile all the time, which is it's just kind of a weird thing, because I don't like being forced to do these things. Smiling all the time is not natural unless you have some kind of mental disease or something. So I don't know, there was like a bunch of things that just weighed down on me, and I just couldn't take it anymore. And I actually know people in Japan who experience the same thing, or even worse things, much worse things than that. You'll have to talk to other people, but if you want to get a job here in Japan as a teacher, just be careful, because there's a lot of small things here which you have to watch out for. When I worked in China, Korea, for example, the company always paid my rent, and that's a huge bonus if you don't have to pay the rent. In Japan, very few places do. That's just one example, but that's a very big example. It's an important example. It's a lot of money we're talking about. And so since I have a bit more time now, people that smile all the time are creepy as fuck. Yes, I agree totally. Like Joker, right? Think about the Joker. That's absolutely unnatural. As unnatural as it gets, literally. Great movies in the 70s were made on drugs. Yep, probably. In the 80s too, I guess. Plus the crazy hair. So since I have more time after leaving my job, well, it's kind of hard, because I basically work on my own. I did make a few projects here in Japan with a small team of people. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Depends on the people. But I've made a couple of short films. I made, of course, the documentary on religions, which, man, that was a lot of work. That's 2 years of work right there. Okay, sometimes, yes, you're waiting for some kind of location, but still, overall, it's a very long process. And of course, I do the podcast, so Age of Reason. And I do this type of thing. I'm gonna try to do it every Friday. So what I'd like to do with this actually is, sometimes it will be talking, but I have other things in mind as well. I would like to, for example, do a kind of director's commentary on my films. I've never done it, but I really want to do it, because there's a lot of things there I could talk about, and it's a promotion for my films as well. So so that's pretty much it. I don't know, I grew up, so in conclusion, I guess, I grew up in a very not religious family. It's true that my grandparents, perhaps they were, but they definitely never pushed it on me, ever. And my mother, when I was young, my mom used to read stories to me, and sometimes the stuff she would read would be considered quite advanced, like Ray Bradbury, for example. I don't know. Reading it at a young age, the Martian Chronicles, for example, it's okay. It's a good story, but yeah. So when she did read the first story of the Bible to me, it was actually the story of Jonah and the whale. And when she finished reading it, I kind of knew it was, come on, it's a joke. It's fiction. It's clearly fiction, okay? And I interpreted everything since then as a piece of fiction, from the Bible anyway. and I guess my parents are a little bit what you would call spiritual, but again, once we start talking about the evidence and I ask them for evidence, yep, there is just not much, nothing really. So, whether you're religious or spiritual, you have to back up your claims. You can't just say, well, but God exists out there. I know it. Okay, how do you know? I mean, the burden of proof is on you. If you're making a claim, then you have to demonstrate it somehow. Good luck demonstrating a God or the supernatural, for that matter. Oh boy, here we go. Fire engines. There's always some kind of fire around here. Well, not around here, but in this area. All right, so just waiting for the noise. I just wanted to mention today about the midterms election. So the midterm is like next week or something. How can I explain this? Okay, so of course we know that we have two parties, but both parties, I believe, are in the same bed. And my opinion on U.S. politics, and I do follow U.S. politics, but my opinion is very much like Jimmy Dore. So again, if you don't know who that is, go to YouTube, Jimmy Dore. He has his own show, podcast. He invites people regularly. He talks about politics. I think it's the bulk of his show. It's very good. It's a very quite well researched. Sometimes I disagree with him. I mean, the one time he mentioned the story about the Uber car crashing, and he was like, "Okay, we need to stop like all the self-driving cars." No, that's not the answer. This is just, I don't agree. So again, he's not a deity. I don't have to agree with everything that he's saying. But when it comes to politics, he is pretty good. And so I had this exchange on Facebook a while ago. So let's just go through that. And I just want to show you how people are not thinking. Let me just switch here. Okay, so I'm a bit smaller, and so we go with that. I don't remember what the original post was, but it was something about the election. So it was just me and this woman here, and she's saying it's good to run progressive candidates in districts where they can win, but it's a stupid idea to run them in districts where a moderate centrist might win. The idea is to get Democrats in seats, whether progressive or centrist. Okay. So before I even comment on that, let's just go to my answer because it will make it easier. Okay, so I said I disagree completely. It depends on who is the Democrat, because if it's another corporate Democrat, then how is that good for the people? And you must be aware that the DNC is already pushing most of the progressive candidates out of local races. Yeah, that's happening. This is actually happening, and it's not surprising that it's happening. There was a kind of phone call or something, or a conversation that was recorded between a progressive candidate and the one of the top guys at the DNC, and the top guy was basically telling that progressive candidate, just get out, you have no money, you have no chance of winning because we have all the money. So we have all the power, and you can just show up and take our place, basically. So that was insane. But I did a podcast that was with Jeremy at the time, where I went in depth into these things. I showed how insane this whole environment is right now and how people are not thinking. I continued here. Most of Democrats, including Warren, voted for Trump's military bill expansion late last year. Well, late last year? I guess it still is the case. Yeah, I'm just trying to get my dates right. $80 billion. And yes, Bernie voted against it. Yes, that was a vote. I do have the record of that somewhere. Yeah, almost everybody voted for a military expansion. And there's another one, I think, coming or already passed. I'm not sure. Again, if you're for promoting the country's well-being, if you want to, talk about education and healthcare, why are you spending even more money on military? You're gonna drop bombs on people that you've never met in your life and who happen to live in the Middle East mostly. And then you wonder why we have so many enemies. Well, perhaps because our priority is war. And just to go back to the first point, it really matters who is the Democrat, because I'm not going to vote for another corporate Democrat because they do not give us anything. They're just a different color, a different shade if you want, but essentially the same thing. If they were different, then why are they all voting to expand the military budget? Why is Tim Kaine so actively voting against people's interests? So she continued and she said, let me get this. So what? So what? I like that. So what? Any candidate is going to vote your way on some things and others people way on others. That's the way democracy works. We all have to be willing to compromise, but we're not compromising. We're surrendering everything. If you hold out for a candidate who's in your corner all the time, you'll wait a long time. We need Democrats in the seats and at the Fed level and state. The centrists and progressives can then debate policy without the shadow of destructive republicanism hanging over our heads. Okay, well, we had 8 years of Obama, and what really changed? If you can't answer that question adequately, then 8 years of Obama, we had the banks getting bigger, we had expansion of wars. He famously went to Flint and drank he drank water or something, and he claimed that now the water is clean. Who was he trying to fool? The people there have lead poisoning. I mean, people dying from lead poisoning or getting serious diseases from that, and the people know better than somebody coming from another state to show up for one event, one night. People know better than that. So what I said is that, seriously, you've seen the damage corporations do in elections. They buy the politicians. That's the whole point. Ever since I really started getting into US politics, I started hearing the thing, we need to get money out of politics. I hear it almost on a daily basis. We need to get money out. Citizens United, we need to get... And nothing's happening. Nothing is happening. They buy the politicians, they own them. The politicians rarely vote on what people want, but they always vote on what the corporations want. A recent study found that the will of the people has little to no effect on policies. I just told you that Democrats go along with Trump more often than not, yet you say that somehow the Democrats are different. The military budget increase is a huge deal, like I mentioned. I think the latest figures that I've seen is that for $30 billion we could end world hunger, and for $20 billion we could end homelessness in the United States. You can solve two problems, and you still would have $30 billion to spare, instead of wasting, and I do mean that word, wasting money on weapons. Or are these things irrelevant? You need to take a closer look at the votes breakdown. The Democrats aren't holy. It's not a simple matter of voting red versus blue. Again, we talked about that on the show with Jeremy. Most people, the only thing they hear is maybe 5 minutes of a politician's speech, and they basically they make their decision based on those 5 minutes that they heard. And politics is a difficult field. You can't fit everything into a tweet. It takes a longer time, definitely more than 5 minutes of your attention span. What we have right now in the US is essentially one big club that do the bidding of rich folk. If you go back some decades ago. Even George Carlin was talking about that. He was saying it's a big club and you ain't in it. And he's not in it either. They're not there to help people like you or me. What I mean there is that people who are, struggling, who are not rich, the benefits, it seems to me actually recently that there is even more pressure on the middle class. There's even more pressure on the poor to cut poor people programs, food stamps, war on food stamps. People just don't understand it. What I would like to see is universal basic income. That I would like to see, and they did have this trial in Toronto actually, I think, or in Ontario, in the state of Ontario. But they had this guy elected there, and basically he kind of canned the whole program. So we'll never find out how successful it was. But the initial data that was coming from that, and by the way, Scandinavian countries are definitely trying that out. But in the Ontario example, we'll never have, unfortunately, the data to see whether it was a success or not. The first information that came, though, is that most people were reinvesting that money back into the economy. They were more actively looking for work. So I disagree with this argument that, if you give people money, like universal basic income, they would just stay at home and do nothing. Most people want to work. Most people want to do something. I want to work. I don't get paid at all. I get paid nothing. But I still make videos. I still make movies. I write a book. It's out of frame now, but it will show up in a second. So most people want to do something. Doing nothing is great, but it gets boring really fast. Trust me. And the final thing that she said is she posted this picture. So Democratic Party, we're not perfect, but they're nuts. This is the worst argument, or definitely one of the worst arguments I will ever hear when it comes to elections. Because what it means is basically, okay, so they're fascists, but we are not like as fascisty as them. So the bar is just a little bit higher. But I'm wondering about the representation of the people. We have Democrats in government, we have Republicans in power, and yeah, it's true that some things get worse. But overall, though, for the needs of the nation, both parties are not doing enough. So yeah, I would like to see more progressive candidates actually winning. And if you see a ballot, if you in your state there's really you don't like anybody, then just don't vote. Because, man, I would not want to be the guy who votes for someone who I don't like anybody on the list. I would just not vote then, or vote green. Or anything except the corporate monsters we have. So anyway, of course I know people are going to say, oh, but you're a Trump supporter. Not at all. I've never said that. I'm just saying you have to look at the big picture. Let me switch back here for a second. So, yep, you have to look at the big picture, always. It's difficult, and I know it's difficult in the US because everybody's bombarded by media 24/7. It's like this noise in your head coming from all directions, and it's hard to remove yourself from that. I know that. I've lived in the States for a bit. I mean, after I was, of course, outside of the time I was born, I know it's hard, and a lot of people work long hours, and some people have 2-3 jobs. They basically just have the time to work, go back home, sleep, and then the next day it's the same thing. There is no time to research things, to get more informed. The system is designed this way. I, for example, would want to see more increase to NASA. I'd like to see the NASA budget increase. It's a joke. It's getting to be ridiculous now. it's the one program that usually has a multiplier effect, what we call in investment. So a lot of the things that were developed up there, like microchips, for example, then eventually they trickle down to our homes. We have now, cell phones with very small circuits in there. So GPS, of course, yeah. I mean, bunch of stuff that maybe initially it started from the military branch, but eventually it comes to us. So yeah, I would like to see things like that happen, but it's not going to happen with Democrats, corporate Democrats, and corporate Republicans in power. I just don't see it. So anyway, well, that's all I wanted to say today, really. So I'm gonna try to do these every Friday. We'll see how it goes. My health is a bit unstable still. So like I said, I don't know what I will do. Maybe sometimes it will be a talking like this about some stuff. And feel free to ask me questions in the chat while I'm doing it, or post your comments in the post your questions in the comments, and I'll get to them later. Get my book. Please support independent art. It's very hard to get out there as an artist. This is the thing, like, that's what I wanted to mention. So I know that this book is not free. I see a lot of free books out there, but I think the reason why they are free is because the writers probably write a lot. Many books, I don't know, a month, but definitely many books a year. So in that case, they can afford to have 1 or 2 books a year, which would be just kind of free, basically promotion. That's not my case. When I write, it takes a long time. I mean, this book, I put a year putting together, but of course there were years of preparation before that. And so I'm not writing often. So I can't make it for free. So please support my book. Please buy it. It's available in print and ebook. Please support my films. There's no charge there. It's free, all of them. And I just finished a recent short film, so it's going into the film festivals, hopefully from next year. So unfortunately, people cannot see it because film festivals have very strict rules regarding premieres and where it's shown and stuff like that. So, but anyway, maybe from 2020 or later, it will be public. But all my other work is available on my website, so please check it out. I'm sure you'll find something that you like. My stuff is it's unique, let's say. Again, I try to make stuff different from other people. Having said that, I also have absolutely no budget or extremely low budgets. So, if you go in there and you expect some kind of Hollywood feature, don't, because it's indie work. But having said that, indie work is not synonymous with bad. There's a lot of great indie work out there, but to get exposure, that's difficult. So anyway, on that note, I will finish here. Have a good weekend, and I will see you next Friday.